Coming up on 5 Minute News. US to provide humanitarian aid to Afghanistan, say Taliban. Iraq's parliamentary vote shown little interest from voters. And Facebook unveils new controls for children using its platform. It's Monday, October 11. I'm Anthony Davis. The United States is to provide humanitarian aid to a desperately poor Afghanistan on the brink of an economic disaster, while refusing to give political recognition to the country's new Taliban rulers, the Taliban said on Sunday. The statement came at the end of the first direct talks between the former foes since the chaotic withdrawal of US troops at the end of August. The US statement was less definitive, saying only that the two sides discussed the United States' provision of robust humanitarian assistance directly to the Afghan people. The Taliban said the talks held in Doha, Qatar, went well, with Washington freeing up humanitarian aid to Afghanistan, agreeing not to link such assistance to formal recognition of the Taliban. The United States made it clear that the talks were in no way a preamble to recognition of the Taliban, who swept into power on August 15 after the US-allied government collapsed. Taliban political spokesman Suhail Shaheen said that the movement's interim foreign minister assured the US during the talks that the Taliban are committed to seeing that Afghan soil is not used by extremists to launch attacks against other countries. On Saturday, however, the Taliban ruled out cooperation with Washington on containing the increasingly active Islamic State group in Afghanistan. IS, an enemy of the Taliban, has claimed responsibility for a number of recent attacks, including Friday's suicide bombing that killed 46 minority Shiite Muslims. Washington considers IS its greatest terrorist threat emanating from Afghanistan. Iraqis voted on Sunday in parliamentary elections, held months ahead of schedule, in a concession to a youth-led popular uprising against corruption and mismanagement. But the voting was marked by widespread apathy and a boycott by many of the young activists who thronged the streets of Baghdad and Iraq's southern provinces in late 2019. Tens of thousands of people took part in the mass protests and were met by security forces firing live ammunition and tear gas. More than 600 people were killed and thousands injured within just a few months. Although authorities gave in and called the early elections, the death toll and the heavy-handed crackdown, as well as a string of targeted assassinations, prompted many who took part in the protests to later call for a boycott of the vote. Results are expected within the next 24 hours, according to the independent body that oversees Iraq's election. But negotiations to choose a prime minister, tasked with forming a government, are expected to drag on for weeks or even months. The election was the sixth held since the fall of Saddam Hussein, after the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Minutes after polls closed, fireworks organized by Baghdad's municipality went off in the city's landmark Tahrir Square, where demonstrators had set up tents for several months starting in October 2019. The protests fizzled out by February of the following year due to the security crackdown and later the coronavirus pandemic. Under Iraq's law, the winner of Sunday's vote gets to choose the country's next prime minister, but it's unlikely any of the competing coalitions can secure a clear majority. That will require a lengthy process involving backroom negotiations to select a consensus prime minister and agree on a new coalition government. Facebook, in the aftermath of damning testimony that its platforms harm children, will be introducing several features, including prompting teens to take a break using its photo-sharing app Instagram, and nudging teens if they are repeatedly looking at the same content that's not conducive to their well-being. The California-based Facebook is also planning to introduce new controls for adults of teens on an optional basis so that parents or guardians can supervise what their teens are doing online. These initiatives come after Facebook announced late last month that it was pausing work on its Instagram for Kids project. But critics say the plan lacks details, and they are skeptical that the new features would be effective. The new controls were outlined on Sunday by former British politician Nick Clegg, now Facebook's Vice President for Global Affairs, who was grilled by journalists about Facebook's use of algorithms as well as its role in spreading harmful misinformation ahead of the January 6 Capitol riots. Clegg said that Facebook has invested $13 billion over the past few years in making sure to keep the platform safe, and that the company has 40,000 people working on these issues. And while Clegg said that Facebook has done its best to keep harmful content out of its platforms, he says he was open for more regulation and oversight. The flurry of interviews came after whistleblower Frances Haugen, a former data scientist with Facebook, went before Congress last week to accuse the social media platform of failing to make changes to Instagram after internal research showed apparent harm to some teens and of being dishonest in its public fight against hate and misinformation. Haugen's accusations were supported by tens of thousands of pages of internal research documents she secretly copied before leaving her job in the company's Civic Integrity Unit. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.